Every year, the NFL releases documentaries celebrating great teams. Every year, they produce content honoring legendary seasons. Every year, they remind us of dynasties and dominant squads that shaped football history. The 2002 Oakland Raiders are never mentioned, not once. An offense that led the entire league in passing yards, a roster featuring 4 future Hall of Famers, an MVP quarterback having the greatest statistical season of his career, a team that demolished 2 playoff opponents by a combined margin of 37 points. Erased, ignored, buried. And I'm going to tell you exactly why. But this is not just a story about a forgotten football team. This is a story about power, about control, about what happens when one organization dares to challenge the most powerful sports league on the planet, and about the lengths that league will go to punish anyone who refuses to fall in line. The NFL does not just ignore the 2002 Raiders. The NFL needs you to forget they ever existed. By the end of this video, you will understand why. Let me start with a number that should make you angry. 4,689. That is how many passing yards Rich Gannon threw in 2002. At the time, it was the 3rd highest single-season total in NFL history. Gannon completed 67.6% of his passes. He threw 26 touchdowns. He was named the league's most valuable player. This was not a fluke season from a mediocre quarterback. This was the peak performance of a 15-year veteran who had finally found the perfect system. Gannon earned every vote. He earned that trophy. But when the NFL discusses great MVP seasons, when they compile lists of legendary quarterback performances, Rich Gannon's 2002 campaign is conspicuously absent. Why? Because acknowledging Gannon's greatness means acknowledging the team around him. And acknowledging that team means confronting questions the NFL refuses to answer. Let me tell you about this roster. The 2002 Oakland Raiders had Jerry Rice, the greatest wide receiver in NFL history, 40 years old and still producing at an elite level. 92 catches, 1,211 yards, 7 touchdowns, numbers that most receivers half his age would celebrate. They had Tim Brown, 17 seasons of excellence, 81 catches for 930 yards, a player who had dedicated his entire career to the silver and black. A future Hall of Famer who deserved a championship more than almost anyone in the sport. They had Charlie Garner, a versatile running back who could hurt defenses on the ground and through the air. 941 rushing yards, 791 receiving yards, 91 receptions, a matchup nightmare that opposing coordinators could not solve. They had Charles Woodson, already one of the best cornerbacks in football, a playmaker who would eventually win Defensive Player of the Year and earn a spot in Canton. They had Rod Woodson, another future Hall of Famer, 37 years old and still picking off passes, still making plays that changed games. They had Lincoln Kennedy, a Pro Bowl offensive tackle protecting Gannon's blindside. They had Bill Romanowski, controversial, yes, but undeniably effective, a linebacker who brought intensity that bordered on insanity. This was not just a good team, this was a collection of legends, a roster that reads like a Hall of Fame ballot. Experience combined with talent, combined with desperation. Veterans who knew their championship windows were closing. They went 11-5 in the regular season. They earned a first-round bye. And then they did something that should have cemented their legacy forever. They destroyed the competition. Divisional round against the New York Jets. The Jets had Chad Pennington, they had Curtis Martin, they had a defense that had been solid all season. Final score, Oakland 30, New York 10. The Raiders did not just win, they dominated. Gannon threw for 283 yards. The defense forced turnovers. The Jets never had a chance. AFC Championship against the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had finished 11-5. They had Steve McNair. They had Eddie George. They had a defense that had been punishing opponents all year. Final score, Oakland 41, Tennessee 24. 41 points against one of the best defenses in the AFC. Gannon threw for 286 yards and 3 touchdowns. Charlie Garner ran wild. The Raiders' offense looked unstoppable. In 2 playoff games, Oakland outscored their opponents 71-34. They were averaging over 35 points per game against elite competition. They were rolling into the Super Bowl with momentum that seemed impossible to stop. And then they disappeared. Not just from Super Bowl XXXVII, from history itself. Let me show you something that proves the NFL's deliberate erasure. In 2016, the league launched a documentary series called America's Game. This series celebrated every Super Bowl champion with detailed retrospectives, interviews with players and coaches, analysis of key moments, a comprehensive look at what made each team special. The 2002 Tampa Bay Buccaneers received an episode. John Gruden was interviewed extensively. The defense was praised, the victory was immortalized. But the team they beat, the team they faced in that Super Bowl? Barely a footnote. The Raiders are mentioned only as opponents. There is no exploration of their dominant season, no acknowledgement of their offensive brilliance, no recognition of the Hall of Fame talent they possessed. It is as if the NFL documented a boxing match, but only showed one fighter. This pattern repeats across every major NFL media production. Top 100 teams of all time lists, greatest offense retrospectives, legendary roster compilations. The 2002 Oakland Raiders are systematically excluded. You might think this is coincidence. You might think the Raiders simply do not measure up statistically. You would be wrong. Let me compare this Raiders offense to teams that the NFL celebrates constantly. The 1998 Minnesota Vikings are regularly called one of the greatest offenses ever. They scored 556 points that season. The 2002 Oakland Raiders scored 450 points. A significant difference, yes. But the Vikings lost in the NFC Championship. They never reached the Super Bowl. They are still celebrated as an all-time great offense. The Raiders reached the Super Bowl. They beat 2 quality opponents to get there, and they are forgotten. The 2004 Indianapolis Colts scored 522 points. They lost in the divisional round. They are regularly featured in NFL Greatest Teams content. The 2011 New England Patriots scored 513 points. They lost the Super Bowl to the Giants. They are frequently discussed as one of the great offensive teams in modern history. The Raiders are not mentioned in the same conversations. The difference is not performance. The difference is something else entirely. The difference is Al Davis. To understand why the NFL erases the 2002 Raiders, you must understand the war between Al Davis and the National Football League, a war that lasted decades, a war that the league has never forgiven. Al Davis was not like other owners. He did not seek approval from his peers. He did not play political games. He did not bow to commissioners or respect unwritten rules. Al Davis sued the NFL, and he won. In 1982, Davis moved the Raiders from Oakland to Los Angeles against the direct orders of the league. The NFL tried to stop him. They voted against the move. They threatened consequences. Davis sued under antitrust law. He argued that the NFL was operating as an illegal monopoly. He took the most powerful sports league in America to court, and he won. The jury awarded the Raiders over $35 million in damages. No owner had ever defeated the NFL so completely. No owner had ever exposed the league's vulnerabilities so publicly. And the NFL never forgot. For the next 30 years, Al Davis existed as a thorn in the league's side. He was excluded from powerful committees. His proposals were rejected. His franchise was treated as an outsider despite being one of the most successful organizations in football history. 3 Super Bowl championships, one of the most iconic brands in all of sports, a fan base that stretched across the globe. And yet, the NFL treated the Raiders like a problem to be managed rather than a partner to be celebrated. This is the context you need. This is why the 2002 Raiders have been erased, not because they were not good enough, but because celebrating them means celebrating Al Davis. And the NFL will never celebrate Al Davis. But there is another reason, a darker reason, a reason that connects directly to Super Bowl XXXVII and everything that went wrong. The NFL cannot acknowledge the 2002 Raiders because doing so would require answering questions about how they lost. You already know about the sabotage allegations. You already know about Bill Callahan and the last-minute game plan changes. You already know that Hall of Fame players believe their own coach betrayed them. But here is what makes this truly dangerous for the NFL. If the league acknowledges that the 2002 Raiders were a historically great team, then they must explain how that team lost 48-21. They must explain how the league MVP threw 5 interceptions. They must explain how the most explosive offense in football was completely neutralized. The easy answer is that Tampa Bay's defense was just that good. John Gruden knew the system, the Buccaneers were prepared, Oakland was outcoached and outplayed. That answer works only if you do not look too closely. But if you acknowledge Oakland's greatness, people start looking closely. They start asking questions. They start wondering how a team that scored 41 points against Tennessee 2 weeks earlier could only manage 21 against Tampa Bay. They start noticing the defensive backs who seem to know every route. They start questioning why no adjustments were made when it became obvious that Tampa Bay had decoded the offense. The NFL cannot afford those questions because those questions lead to uncomfortable places. They lead to the integrity of the Super Bowl itself. Let me tell you about something that happened in the weeks before Super Bowl XXXVII, something that has been buried almost as thoroughly as the Raiders' legacy. In late January 2003, unusual betting activity was detected on the Super Bowl. The line, which had opened with Tampa Bay as a slight favorite, began moving in unexpected ways. Money was coming in on Tampa Bay in patterns that caught the attention of oddsmakers. This happens sometimes. Sharp bettors move lines. It is not automatically suspicious, but the volume and timing of these bets raised eyebrows. Sources within the sports betting industry have confirmed that the activity before Super Bowl XXXVII was unusual, not necessarily evidence of anything improper, but unusual. The NFL has never addressed this. They have never explained why the betting patterns looked strange. They have never investigated whether anyone with insider knowledge might have influenced the market. And they never will, because investigating means acknowledging that something might have been wrong, and the NFL cannot afford to acknowledge that anything was wrong with the Super Bowl. So instead, they bury the 2002 Raiders. They pretend the team was not that impressive. They exclude them from historical retrospectives. They make sure that any discussion of Super Bowl XXXVII focuses on Tampa Bay's brilliance rather than Oakland's collapse. It is not a conspiracy to hide the truth. It is a business decision to avoid uncomfortable questions, and it has worked perfectly for 20 years.
There is another dimension to this erasure that nobody talks about. The 2002 Raiders represented something the NFL has always tried to suppress. They represented rebellion, individuality, defiance of the corporate homogeneity that the league sells to sponsors. Look at that roster. Really look at it. Jerry Rice was playing for the Raiders because the San Francisco 49ers had discarded him. He came to Oakland with something to prove, a chip on his shoulder, a desire to show that he was not finished. Tim Brown had spent his entire career with an organization that the league treated as an outsider. He embraced that identity. He loved being a Raider precisely because it meant being different. Bill Romanofsky was a player the league would have preferred to hide. Controversial, intense, a walking contradiction to the clean image the NFL tries to project. Charles Woodson had been part of the Tuck Rule controversy just 1 year earlier, a play that many believe robbed the Raiders of a Super Bowl appearance. The NFL's officiating had directly harmed his team, and now he was back demanding what was taken. This was not a corporate-friendly roster. This was not a team that fit neatly into NFL marketing campaigns. This was a collection of rebels, outcasts, and veterans with grudges. The NFL does not celebrate teams like this. The NFL celebrates dynasty patriots and America's team cowboys and family-friendly champions who generate positive headlines. The 2002 Raiders generated questions. They generated controversy. They generated the kind of attention the league cannot control. So, they were erased. Let me tell you what the NFL does acknowledge about 2002. They acknowledge John Gruden extensively. The coach who left Oakland and immediately won a Super Bowl. The genius who took a Tampa Bay defense and turned them into champions. The mastermind who out-schemed his former team. Gruden was featured in countless NFL productions. He was given a Monday Night Football booth. He was celebrated as one of the great offensive minds in football history. Until he was not. In 2021, Gruden resigned from the Raiders after emails containing racist, homophobic, and misogynistic comments were leaked. His fall from grace was swift and complete. But here's what is interesting. The NFL had those emails for years. They were discovered during the investigation into the Washington Commanders' workplace culture. The league had seen them. They had made the decision not to release them, until it became convenient to do so. I am not defending Gruden. His words were indefensible. But the timing of that leak raises questions. Gruden had recently returned to the Raiders. He was coaching the team again. He was back in Oakland, which had moved to Las Vegas but still carried the same identity. And suddenly, emails from a decade earlier became public. The NFL controls information. They decide what gets released and when. They decide whose legacy gets protected and whose gets destroyed. John Gruden went from celebrated genius to exiled pariah almost overnight. And in destroying Gruden, the league also buried any remaining interest in revisiting Super Bowl XXXVII. Because now discussing that game means discussing a disgraced coach. It means giving attention to someone the NFL wants forgotten. It means opening wounds that the league has worked hard to close. The 2002 Raiders are collateral damage. Their erasure is now permanent, not just because of Al Davis, not just because of the sabotage questions, but because the man who beat them has become radioactive. The NFL wins either way. There's one more thing I need to tell you. Something about what this erasure means for the players who gave everything that season. Rich Gannon never reached another Super Bowl. His career ended shortly after, cut short by injuries and age. The greatest season of his career, the MVP trophy, the journey to the championship game, all of it tainted by a loss that he still cannot fully explain.
Gannon has spoken about Super Bowl XXXVII in measured terms. He does not make accusations, he does not point fingers, but there is a sadness in his words that goes beyond normal disappointment, a sense that something was stolen from him that he will never get back. Jerry Rice played 2 more seasons after that Super Bowl. He never won another championship. The greatest receiver in history finished his career with 3 rings, all won in San Francisco. His time with the Raiders, his attempt to prove he still had greatness left, ended in humiliation. Tim Brown retired after the 2003 season. 17 years with the Raiders, 0 championships. He had given everything to that organization, and his one chance at a ring was destroyed by circumstances he could not control. These men deserved better. They deserved a legacy. They deserved to be remembered as part of one of the great offensive teams in NFL history. Instead, they are forgotten, their accomplishments minimized, their pain ignored. The NFL does not care about their stories. The NFL cares about protecting the shield, maintaining the brand, controlling the narrative. And the narrative says the 2002 Raiders do not matter. But they do matter. They matter because truth matters. They matter because athletes who sacrifice their bodies for our entertainment deserve recognition. They matter because history should not be written by the powerful at the expense of the inconvenient. The 2002 Oakland Raiders were a great team, one of the most talented rosters ever assembled, an offense that terrorized the league for an entire season, a collection of future Hall of Famers playing with desperation and purpose. They lost the Super Bowl. Yes. They lost badly. Yes. But losing does not erase what they accomplished. Losing does not mean they should be forgotten. Losing does not give the NFL the right to pretend they never existed. The league wants you to forget. The league benefits from your amnesia. The league profits when you only remember the stories they choose to tell. Do not let them win. Remember the 2002 Raiders. Remember Rich Gannon's MVP season. Remember Jerry Rice at 40 years old, still producing like a star. Remember Tim Brown's loyalty and Charlie Garner's versatility and Charles Woodson's brilliance. Remember that this team was real, that they were great, that they deserved a championship they were never allowed to win. And remember that the NFL's silence is not an accident. It is a choice, a deliberate decision to bury a team that represented everything the NFL fears: rebellion, independence, questions without answers. The 2002 Oakland Raiders will never get an NFL Films documentary. They will never be featured in a Greatest Teams retrospective. They will never receive the recognition their talent deserved. But they will be remembered here, on this channel, by people who refuse to let the NFL write history unchallenged. The silver and black deserves better. The players who wore those colors deserve better. The fans who supported that team through heartbreak and controversy deserve better. And as long as this channel exists, we will make sure the truth is never erased. Subscribe if you believe that history belongs to everyone, not just the powerful. Share this video if you want others to know what the NFL has tried to hide. The 2002 Raiders were great. No amount of silence can change that. And we will never stop reminding the world.